Are you a fascist? Are you a communist? Are you a Muslim? Are you an idiot? Are you a socialist? Are you white? Are you black? Are you a Jew? Well, with that introduction, this is Joe Simhart, and I'm going to talk about loaded questions which can put the opponent or the person you're addressing on their heels in a defensive posture. These kinds of questions are part of the loaded language within cult groups that want to pretend they are the elite and that those on the outside are somehow less informed, less enlightened, less privileged, and so forth, to some kind of inside knowledge. That doesn't mean that they're necessarily wealthier. Very often they're not. But my main topic right now, for this particular segment is based on this book I finished. And it was published last year as a bestseller by historian and novelist Lucy Adlington. And it's the true story of the women who sewed to survive. The title is called The Dressmakers of Auschwitz. So the Holocaust and Hitler and the Nazis have been covered ad nauseum, even on the so-called History Channel. People came to call it the Hitler Channel 20 years ago because practically every other show was about World War II and Hitler and Mussolini and Stalin and all that extreme crisis that took place in the middle of the 20th century. But in this book that revisits a lot of the fascist movements and enterprises in Germany, we look at it from the point of view of women, especially dressmakers in the fashion industry. Lucy Adlington is a historian of fashion, and she understands clothing and its cultural implications very, very well. And it's from that point of view that we're looking at Auschwitz and the Holocaust. And she concentrates on a group of women that became the dressmakers for Rudolf Hess's wife, Hedwig Hess, who started something outside of the Auschwitz camp called the Upper Tailoring Studio. And what happened was Germany was plundering everything the Jews owned in the surrounding countries and area that they could. And so there were mountains of shoes, mountains of clothes, jewelry, artwork, the property, but just mountains of clothing in this one space that they called Canada with a K. And in Auschwitz, that meant that this warehouse area was like full of wealth, which they imagined Canada, the country, being a wealthy country. So they nicknamed it Canada, kind of a loaded term. So in the Canada warehouse, there were these mountains of clothes throughout the Holocaust that were stripped from Jews, 80 to 90% of whom were exterminated quite quickly after arriving. Rudolf Hess, who was in charge of Auschwitz, his plan, in concert with Hitler and others in the Nazi Party, was to exterminate 10,000 unwanted people a day. And that meant mentally ill people, gypsies, Jews, so forth, most of them being Jews. So if you just sort of count that up, the 10 million that people estimate that the Nazis exterminated in these death camps is far below what the goal was stated by Hess and others, which would have been 12 to 15 million if they could have gotten away with it. So I don't want to rehearse all of that, but what I'm want to look at here is, why pick on the Jew? Why were they stereotyped in such a way, and how does stereotyping take place? Well, it starts with a sense, and I keep bringing this up, of wounded narcissism, that there's something happening to me because of other people out there that's making my life worse. And so if I can cleanse the society around me of the vermin of those people that are draining my life of its worth, I'll have a better life, and we'll have a better country, and we'll have a better future, and all of that. And this is what, for example, was the impetus behind social Darwinism and the eugenics movement, which was picked up from America by the Nazis and enhanced quite a bit during the war years, in order to cleanse society of unwanted genetic or cultural material and purify it, and thus have a kind of a 1,000 years of bliss and prosperity on earth. The theory, of course, means that you have to target certain people as being unworthy to live. You dispense with their existence, as Robert Lifton says in his analysis of the psychology of totalism. So, we can look at this book, and I recommend you read it. The reason I was interested in it, I just picked it up at an airport on my way back from New Mexico last month, because we were stuck overnight in a airport in North Carolina, and I read the book. My mother, who's 97, was trained as a seamstress and dressmaker in Hungary after she graduated 8th grade and went into a trade, as they did back in those days in Eastern Europe and throughout Europe. And so I grew up with a sewing machine in my house. My mother was a professional dressmaker and quite good at it. I married a woman who, my wife Becky, who is a professional dancer and teacher of ballet, but she's also a professional dressmaker and tailor, and the sewing machine is constantly going in our places of our residences since we've known each other. Her mother, my mother-in-law, is a self-taught dressmaker and taught Becky when she was young. And she would sew costumes for the dance studio and all of that kind of thing when she was younger. So, dressmaking and the whole idea of needle and thread and the history of tailoring is quite personal to me, and which is why I picked up the book. But, I also got to thinking about QAnon, which has been on my mind in these video segments that I'm doing. And I looked up a recent report on the status of QAnon. So let's go back to my questions of, are you a Jew? Are you a Muslim? Are you white or black? These loaded questions. The QAnon people ask the question in this way, are you one of the elites? Are you part of the Cabal, meaning the cabal of satanic elites that are kidnapping children and doing all kinds of violent things to control our society? And underneath that, within that context of are you an elite, are you part of the cabal, is something called the Zionist Occupation Government, which has been around in white supremacist circles as a kind of a thing that Jews somehow are secretly, along with Masons and others, running the world economy for their own selfish needs and greed. And they call it ZOG, Z-O-G, if you see it. So, when someone asks, are you a Jew, it has a lot of implications, and it certainly had implications for these dressmakers, because once they were found out, they were marched to the death camps, and many of them summarily executed within weeks of arrival. Those who were useful to people like Hedwig Hess, who ran this fashion salon, she had Jewish women sewing clothes out of the pile of fabrics and whatever that were confiscated, for the elite wives and men in the SS, the High German Command. So the hypocrisy there is amazing, that they didn't want anything to do with anything the Jews touched in their kind of philosophy toward nationalism. Yet the elite hired Jews because they were the most skilled at making clothing and at designing fashion for the SS wives. Anyway, what I looked at regarding QAnon and its development over the year, like a year ago, 70% of people within the Q movement, within the Republican Party, believed that there was something going on, like a satanic cabal within the socialist left and the elites that are running the government or whatever. This is a complete conspiracy theory. It's bizarre. It's something that, for instance, my cult, the Church Universal and Triumphant, that was run by Elizabeth Prophet, promoted some version of that when I was involved in it back in the late 1970s, that there was this capitalist communist conspiracy and these elites and whatever running the world, and that they were all evil. Today, the estimate on a survey has about 7% of that group in QAnon and the alt-right believe in this cabal, in this group of elites, they call them, that run the world. And that amounts to about 22 million Americans. Now, that's a hell of a lot of people. That's a huge cult, if you want to use that word. So it's not fading away quickly or easily. There are people locked in to this point of view, and they're willing to fight for it. They believe that cleansing the world of these satanic creatures that are somehow owning their lives would be a good thing, and to take up arms and do that would be a good thing. What kind of government they would replace the ZOG, the Zionist Occupational Government, with is frightening in itself, because if that's your idea of government, is to take over government by force and to keep running it by force, well, you've just reestablished exactly what you're fighting against. In other words, you're accusing your enemy of exactly what you're doing yourself. So, this is the frightening thing about people that approach reality with loaded questions. They're going to get loaded answers back. They're not going to be able to see reality and test it in a proper way. It's going to appeal to their emotional needs, their narcissistic needs, rather than seeing a shared reality which is healthier for a broader range of people. So, if you have people trolling you by posting on your social media questions like, are you a communist? Are you a fascist? Are you a Jew? I recommend don't even answer them. Don't try to argue. Just let it lie flat, unless you really have a strong position on how to parse that out and to draw that person out into the open, so that you can help them examine their point of view as well, which is what I used to do when I did deprogramming. It would take days. It would take 20, 30, 40 hours of really hard give and take, respectful kind of exchange in order to get someone to see that their psychological closure is actually harming them, and to have them suddenly snap out of it. Maybe not so suddenly, it can be over a period of time, and then grow from that new point of view into a more mature and healthy-minded human being. So anyway, with that rambling topic, I'd still recommend you read this book. I really enjoyed the history. By the way, there's 60 pages of references in this. which means she did quite a bit of research over a decade in order to put this story together and give us a better idea of what happened to the women, the talent that went to Auschwitz. Thank you for listening. This is Joe Simhart signing off, and hopefully I come up with an interesting topic the next time. Thank you.